All right, now that I have a interesting base image that I can play with, I want to start exploring maybe playing with value as our first one. And again, value is lights and darks, shades of gray, seeing what you can do there. So I have a couple cool tricks for shifting and playing with value. I am moving to the top of my layer stack. And down at the bottom of our layers panel, right in the middle, we have this circle that's half black, half white, tipped over. If we click on that, we're going to get all these pop-ups of all these adjustment layers. And the one I want to play with is black and white. And that does pretty much what it sounds like. It converts your image into a black and white. What's really cool about this, though, is you'll see here I have these properties. And with these, I have the ability to grab individual colors. And I can drag one of the sliders to the right and to the left, right? If I go to the right, what it does is it's going to take everything that's red in the image and make it brighter. I can take it to the left and everything that's red in the image gets darker. So maybe I want I don't know, kind of a bright sky. I know there's a lot of greens in the foreground, so I can kind of darken those. Actually, is it a lot of blues? Or is it a lot of cyan? Or is it a lot of yellows? Ah, the yellow, right? So you guys can see that by moving my yellow down at the bottom, my land gets very bright, right? Maybe even some of those cyans. I can brighten that up, and that creates a nice, interesting feel here. Or I could go the other way and darken it way down, right? And now it's a very different feeling image, right? So with the black and white, you can have a lot of fun really playing with lights and darks, both for the overall image, which is kind of cool. Kind of like, I don't know, do I like it like that? That's nice and dark and kind of trippy. Or do I go nice and bright? No, I think I like it the dark and trippy, right? So that works really, really well. And all I'm doing for that is putting that on top of all my other layers. And that's going to affect everything down below it. Now there's something cool you can do with this as well. We're not tied to doing this as a global everything. If I move this black and white maybe on top of just my stars, and I hold down, so it's above the layer I want to affect, and I want to do what's called clipping. So at the bottom of my properties, you can see that I've got this little icon of a box with an arrow pointing down. Or if I hover in between the two layers and hold down the Alt key, I get that same icon, and then I can click. And you'll see that I now have a little piece that's pointing down that says this only affects this layer. What's nice for this is I can affect this one here affects only that layer. So I can use this to really kind of play with, I don't know what colors are actually in this image other than red and magenta. I can use this to affect the relative lights and darks of individual layers. So maybe I do that, but then on my land, I would like another black and white. And I'm going to clip that so that now I can play with my black and white and affect something completely separate from the sky. So you can make this as complicated as you want, affecting individual layers or affecting the overall whole, which is really pretty cool. You also have something else that's really kind of neat that I like is the tint. And I'm going to do this on the whole thing. I'm going to make a black and white adjustment layer, and I'm going to create a tint. And with a tint, it is pretty much what it looks like, right? It gives us a bit of a color. By default, you get this sort of sepia faded beige, but maybe I want to tint everything to a certain color. and I can make it just a hint of a certain color. So this is starting to get into that idea of color, but also primarily black and white gives you the ability to control that. So this sort of thing is going to look very different than a nice bright red image. That's looking kind of scary, right? Although it's kind of cool, right? So value is really nice, being able to shift our colors. So we have one more thing that gives us lots of freedom in value. Another adjustment layer, I'm going to do this up at the top. We're going to do levels. Now levels are pretty cool. You're going to get this little mountain range diagram. And what this means is this is your range of your darks at one end and your lights at the other. And you can see that right now my image is very much closer to the dark end of the spectrum. And your mountain range will be whatever it is. That's okay. We have these sliders though, and we have this bar at the bottom here that we can play with. So the sliders, the middle slider, if we shift this, what you're doing is saying this is the 50% halfway mark. So by shifting this, what it does is it moves everything, says everything to the right of this is brighter than 50%. And everything to the left is darker. So by shifting it, we can brighten everything, or we could go the other way and darken everything. And that is a very, very different image than that, right? It's telling a different story. What the story is, I have no idea right now, but it's fun to play with that. We can also play with, at the endpoints, we have, what this does is says, this black one says everything to the left of this little triangle is now completely black. So I can use this to really darken down the overall image. Or the other side, I can use the white, and I can take the white and push over, and it says everything to the right of this becomes pure white. So I can use this to build up a very complex, high contrast image. And the closer I bring these two together, the closer we get to pure black and white. And that is a very different dark nightmare scene, right, than if I was to do something like this and maybe just brighten it all up. And that's a little bit happier kind of scene. So bringing these in adds contrast. Whereas down below, we have just this horizontal bar, and playing with this basically neutralizes it, sort of the opposite of contrast. So by pulling these in closer, you're going to see that I'm losing the bold blacks and whites. And actually, if I bring these two together, eventually it just fades out to complete gray. But I can use this to really soften kind of a anti-contrast scene. So yes, doing this and playing with this really allows you to adjust your levels and your overall sense of light and dark and contrast. Again, like we did before, these are adjustment layers, and at the top it's going to affect everything below it. But if I move this on top of one of these layers, like I'm going to go on top of maybe my landscape, and I'm going to hold down that Alt key and clip it. Now my levels are going to affect only, well, clip it. There we go. My levels are going to affect only the landscape, or whatever layer I'm on. So I can actually use this to, independent of all the other elements, I can use this to really push and pull and tweak my scene. Isn't that cool? So yeah, using adjustment layers for just black and white to convert everything to black and white, and then playing with the settings, you can affect overall whole by being at the top of your layer stack, or you can clip to individual layers and manipulate individual elements. You can also use levels to play with contrast and lighten and darken overall whole, again, if you're top of the layer stack, or if you're at the bottom, or if you want to move it down and affect individual layers. Really pretty cool what you can do with this to study value.